April 22nd, 1904. The sun was shining bright, and I knew today was going to be the day Ella, my wife of course, would give birth to our child. We rushed to the hospital and got her situated in her room. I gave her one last kiss before she went into the operating room. I sat down in the waiting room and waited for that special child of mine to be delivered. A few hours later, I heard a distant little cry. I rushed down the hallway and around the corner into a room, and there on the bed was my wife and a little boy with dark brown hair. He had his mother's eyes. We'll call him Robert, J. Robert Oppenheimer. I always loved my son. He was like every other child, loved toys, played in the rain. He always had that big, cheery smile on his face, but there was always something different about him. You could always tell he was a little brighter than other children. I never knew my son would grow up to be a mass murderer.
Hitler, Stalin, Saddam Hussein, all mass murderers.
The things they did impacted the world forever in a way that we can never change. J. Robert Oppenheimer, a man who created the most advanced mass murder weapon of probably all time. But no one really knows the truth behind the madness and just how awful people really are to one another.
In this story, we follow the true life story of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
A historical triumph
In a personal tragedy.
by Riley Squires and Aidan Swift. 1921.
Robert spent his early days like any other child, going to school, living with his family, enjoying the outdoors. When he graduated from high school, he finished as the valedictorian of his class. Soon after, he fell ill to dysentery, which postponed him from enrolling in Harvard. Shortly after being on bed rest for months, his parents sent him off to New Mexico in the summer of 1922. While there, he would take long horseback trips and enjoyed the outdoors. He went on to get his undergraduate from Harvard, but shortly after sailed to England to further his studies. In 1927, he was invited to the University of Göttingen by Niels Bohr, where he received his doctorate. Later on, he sailed back to the States to start his teaching career at the University of California. He taught at many different universities over the next few years, and in 1938, at the University of Berkeley, he made an acquaintance with a student named Edward Gurjoy.
Dr. Oppenheimer was different than other professors. His classes were all lectures brought at high speed. I never had time to write down notes. I could never ask questions because once he started talking, there was no stopping him. Although if a student felt the need to ask a question in the middle of a lecture, Oppenheimer would have a patient answer. But if the student still persisted because they were confused, Oppenheimer would then reply with a bitter response of sarcasm, and then go right back to lecturing. If I'm completely honest, I learned far more physics from his class than any other class I had taken.
In 1937, tragedy struck the home of the Oppenheimers.
Father, no, it's too soon.
Robert, my time has come, and there's nothing we can do about it now. I just want you to always remember the good times we had, son. I will always love you.
No, I can't let you go.
Goodbye, son. Julius Oppenheimer had passed away and left Robert with a large inheritance, but a hole that can never be fixed. Oppenheimer struggled with the passing of his father, but knew he had to move on. The next few months, word on the street was that the Germans were on a new path of nuclear warfare.
August 2nd, 1939. In the course of the last 4 months, it has been made probable through the work of Joliot in France, as well as Fermi and Slizard in America, that it may be possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large mass of uranium, by which vast amounts of power and large quantities of new radium-like elements would be generated. Now it appears almost certain that this could be achieved in the immediate future. In view of this situation, you may think it desirable to have some permanent contact maintained between the administration and the group of physicists working on the chain reactions in America. One possible way of achieving this might be for you to entrust the task with a person who has your confidence and who could perhaps serve in an unofficial capacity. Yours very truly, Albert Einstein.
In August 1942, the U.S. Army was put in charge of organizing the process of harnessing nuclear energy. These efforts were named the Manhattan Project, and the man at the whole of the project was none other than J. Robert Oppenheimer.
1943, Los Alamos, New Mexico. Alright everyone, this will be our lab to get this bomb together. The Germans have already gotten an extra head start on this, so we have to put our heads together and work extra hours, because remember, this is for your country. Now grab your lab coats, we have work to do.
On July 16, 1945, the world's first explosion of a nuclear bomb took place. The blast was comparable to 20,000 tons of dynamite.
We waited until the blast had passed, walked out of the shelter, and then it was extremely solemn. We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed, a few people cried. Most people were silent.
Just a month had passed, and 2 Japanese cities were targeted with the nuclear bombs by the United States, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan then surrendered on August 10, 1945.
Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands.
After the war, Oppenheimer earned the Presidential Medal of Merit in 1946. This was the highest civilian honor a person could receive during the time period. Although there were many great accomplishments in his lifetime, it ended very abruptly. Oppenheimer refused to make a more powerful hydrogen bomb and lost his security clearance to the U.S. Oppenheimer was accused of having communist affiliations, which was in fact true. This loss of clearance ended his influence upon the scientific world. It's just sad how someone can do something amazing for the country, but then get treated so poorly for reasons we cannot understand. J. Robert Oppenheimer passed away in 1967 in February of throat cancer. We look back on his impact on the society and all the scientific knowledge and his optimistic views he brought to the table.
The United States could not be more privileged to have such a great citizen on our side. Robert created an amazing scientific breakthrough that people do not totally understand at the time, and that is why they acted the way they did towards him. Even though personally, lots of roles and duties were taken away from him after the war, we see things in a new light. J. Robert Oppenheimer will forever be remembered as an American war hero.